single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way. Every single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
Okay.
All right, good morning, everybody. How are you guys doing?
Thank you guys. Thank you for your patience. Okay. And welcome to our seminar here. First off, I would like to just ask everybody here, anybody here doesn't understand English? Because the presentation is going to be in English, but if you'd like to go ahead and, have it in Spanish, we'll just put you in a little separate area where we can go ahead and have the seminar in Spanish. Anybody? You guys can understand the English? Okay, perfect. All right, guys. So welcome again to our seminar. I commend you guys. I'm very happy that you guys took this step towards your home ownership. You will walk out of here with the knowledge needed in order for you to successfully obtain your home in 2019. Who wants to buy a home in 2019? Raise your hand. So you guys, congratulations. So we will go ahead and facilitate that. What we're hoping is that we can form a partnership with our lenders, ourselves. We've got Nacho, here's a realtor. My boss here, who's the broker of the firm. So I'm gonna go ahead and present you to him in a second, and he will go ahead and go over some of the details about the purchase of the home. So again, thank you very much. Also, one thing, before you guys leave today, if you have the curiosity of knowing what your credit score, what your credit is and things like that, stay here. If not, we can work with you down the road. Okay, so we can set up an appointment so you guys can come over whenever you guys have, when you're ready, okay? Because we're gonna be here when you're ready to get your home purchase, okay? So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and present to you my broker, Eduardo Franco.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for that. All right, my name is Eduardo Franco. I'm the broker here of the office. That's okay. Or you're filming?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm the broker here of the office. Been in business almost 20 years. Been a broker, had an office for about 12 years now. Okay, I have over 50 people here in my management. Ignacio and Giovanni being one of them. So just a little bit about myself. We've brokered probably close to 4,000 transactions. Just so hopefully you feel a little bit better. Okay. Grew up in the area, been here all my life. So just a little bit of background on myself, okay? Of course, we're licensed, you got the old presentation, 16 years, but anyways, we're a member of the California Association of Realtors, a member of the National Association of Realtors, and also a member of our local board, which is the Inland Valley Association of Realtors. We let go of the Victorville Association because they merged into our CRMLS, but we still cover pretty much all of Southern California. Even though we're licensed in the state, we can get you guys a home anywhere in the state, but we try to limit it to Southern California, LA, Orange County, San Diego, and of course Riverside and San Bernardino. We are certified with default properties. If you know of anybody that has issues with their mortgage, they're in default, we can also help them with that. Okay, and then we are a HUD registered broker, which means that if you see a HUD home, has anybody ever heard of a HUD home? Yeah. It's been a while. You don't see a whole lot of HUD homes nowadays, but if you do see a HUD home, probably 1 or 2 properties a month at the most out here. We are certified with HUD. Not all brokers are certified. We have to get a yearly certification with HUD for that. So our agenda today is going to be, what it takes to find the right agent. I know you guys got here because of probably advertisements that were sent out by either Gio or Ignacio. But you do have to choose your real estate agent. Of course, you have to work with someone that you feel comfortable, that of course is knowledgeable. Number one, that is patient with you guys. Because buying a house, it's not like, hey, I like that one, let's get it. Sometimes it happens, but we have to be patient. you have to make sure you make the right decision. You know, it's a home that you're not going to regret, you know, next month or next year because, you know, something's wrong with it or the location or whatnot. There's so many factors involved, as you'll hear today. I'll talk briefly about the different types of residences, the different types of sales, you know, what it takes to write an offer, earnest money deposits, your home inspection, and then of course when do I get my keys. So it's going to be a very brief explanation of the home process, okay? Because I could be here all day non-stop explaining to you guys you know, what it takes to buy a home. So this will be a brief summary. Of course, once you're ready to take the next step, usually you know, Ignacio or Giovanni will sit down with you and go over, you know, the purchase agreement per se. If you go over the purchase agreement, you'll see what you're getting yourself into, you know, legally. It's a legal contract, right? So you look at all the different steps that it takes to make a sale go through. Okay? So again, buying a house, it's not a quick process like going to the store where you buy a pair of shoes or a jacket or whatever, where you just, you know, find your product, you pay for it, and you're out the door, right? It's a lengthier process. That takes quite a bit of time, you know. We've sold homes as quickly as 5 days, you know, cash. But when you're financing a property, and if it's your first home, well, cash, usually it's an investor. They don't care. They're getting a great deal that, you know, no matter what happens, they're going to make money, right? But usually, for the most part, you're going to be paying fair market value. So you want to do your due diligence. You want to make sure that everything's good with the property and, of course, with your financing before you moved forward. When selecting a real estate agent, we're licensed in California, I told you before, but it's always best that you deal with someone that's local. We go to LA, Orange County, San Diego, and typically it's mainly to list a house if people are moving out this way. Are all of you guys local? Yeah, all of you guys are local here, yeah. So it's very common that people are moving out here from LA or Orange County. You know, homes are a lot cheaper out here, they're more affordable, so they're selling out there, buying out here, in many cases cash. But again, it doesn't mean we can't go and show property out there as well. But it does help when you have a local agent, just because there might be you know, certain areas in town where maybe they're widening the streets, and if you bring an agent that doesn't know the area or doesn't do their due diligence, you know, they miss telling you that, hey, you know what, in a few months or in a few years, you know, you're going to lose like 10 feet off the front of your property for streets. Or perhaps there's a new highway going through Paris, San Jacinto, Mead Valley area. You know, that highway's already on the works. It's on paper. When it's going to start, we don't know. But guess what? There's a ton of homes in that pathway that are going to get demolished pretty soon. My guess is maybe in the next 5 years it's going to happen, okay? It could be sooner. But these are the things that you need to know as a buyer. And when you're working with somebody local, you know, we stay up to speed with you know, all the city meetings that they have occasionally with rezoning and stuff like that. So so it does help to have someone that's local. As far as experience, yes, experience counts. We all know that. You know, I don't know what you guys do for a living, but you know, if you bake cakes, you know, it does help that you know how to bake a cake, right? You're going to burn it if you don't the first time, and the second time might come out a little better. It's the same with real estate. The only thing with real estate, and it might be the same with a bakery or whatever it is, or a mechanic, you always have somebody looking after your actions, right? So I'm the broker here. I'm responsible for everything all my salespeople do. So I review every single document that goes through my office. Anytime there's a doubt in anything, I don't care how minute that doubt is, they have to come to me, okay? And if there's anything I don't know, we go to our attorneys, okay? And then we consult with them, okay? But again, experience count, just letting you know that they do have the backup in the background. I'm overlooking everything that gets done. But you know, these guys have been in many years in the business. They know pretty much everything that they have to take care of. So as a buyer, some brokers will ask you to have an exclusive agreement, okay? I don't require exclusive agreements in my office, okay? An exclusive agreement is where you come to me and say, okay, I'll work with you for the next 6 months or the next year. You're going to be my realtor, and if you get me a house, I'll pay you $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000. Okay, it's not common for a real estate agent to charge money to a buyer. You don't pay anything to a real estate agent. We get paid by the seller. Okay, but there are a few agents out there that will request that you have an exclusive agreement. And in my opinion, the exclusive agreement is I'm doing my job and you're going to stick with me, right? You have no reason to go elsewhere. So if I'm doing my job, it's just as even better than an exclusive agreement. So, but if you decide to go out there with someone else, hopefully that's not the case. be careful with that, okay? Same thing with the fees. Okay? There's no need for an exclusive agreement. Now, as far as agency, anytime an agent starts to work with you, we have something called the fiduciary duty, which means, we have a huge responsibility in order to meet your needs, make sure everything goes smooth, and that we get you into a property that's going to be, to your benefit. So, in some cases, we're going to have a listing. It's our seller, and then you're going to be purchasing that property. We call that dual agency. So when that happens, there's always a possibility for conflict of interest. Since I'm already helping the seller, you might say, well, are you going to be in my favor, or are you going to be in the favor of the seller, right? So there's times where some buyers aren't comfortable, or even some sellers aren't comfortable with the dual agency. There's some states in the country that do not allow dual agency. Okay, I put this in a way of, for example, like if you have an attorney, the same lawsuit, you don't have the same attorney on both sides, do you? So you each have your own attorney. Now, it doesn't mean things can't go smooth. If there's honesty, everybody's transparent. It doesn't mean things can't go smooth with dual agency. So, but just something to keep in mind. If you run into a transaction where the listing agent is the same as the buyer's agent. Okay? And again, I already told you this one. As an agent, we receive compensation from the buyer. Okay? You will have fees. The lender will speak about fees, but
From the seller.
From the seller.
Oh, from the seller, so buyer side. You will have fees with your loan, which your lender will discuss all that. And in some cases, you can have the seller pay your fees. You can have a assistance program pay your fees, which again, the lender will speak about that. But for the most part, you don't pay us a commission, okay? All right, so types of residences, I'll just go through these very quickly. You have your single family residence, one house and one lot, right? You might have a condominium, Condo, you have common areas. You guys have heard of a condo, right? There's shared areas in the community, or a townhome as well. You might have a multifamily residence where you have 2 units, 3, maybe even 4. Anything over 4 is considered residential commercial. So as a buyer, you might be able to buy 4 units. It's just as easy as buying 1 unit, okay? So if you're looking into investment opportunities in the future, hey, that would be a good thing to get into. Unfortunately, we don't see a lot of that here in Moreno Valley. Not a whole lot of units like you see out in LA, but that's another option. And then of course you have the manufactured homes. You got the D there. So manufactured homes, we call them mobile homes, but indeed they're manufactured. They're built much better. Some of them are a lot nicer than some homes. All right, but financing might be a little, not much different, but you need to tell the lender, hey, I'm considering a manufactured home, because they need to know. But the interest rate might be a little higher. We have to make sure it's on a foundation, and that it's it was registered as a fixture with the land. Okay? But those are your different types of residences. Okay. And then occasionally we'll get folks saying, well, I want to buy my own land. Can I do that? I don't have this here on this printout, but if you do want to buy land, that is even a little more difficult. There's not a lot of banks giving loans for land, but that would be another option as well. Okay, and as far as types of sales, we have something called a standard sale, which, I don't know, we're up in the 80% of our sales, close to 90% are standard sales. That means you're the buyer and we have a human selling the house. It's an individual, okay? When you have a short sale, now there's somebody else in the mix, okay? Short sale means someone's losing their property. They owe more than what it's worth. So now we have a third party involved. Now the lender that lent money to that seller needs to approve the sale, okay? That means if they owe $200,000 to the bank, you're buying the house for $100,000, so there's a $100,000 shortage, right? So the bank needs to approve that sale. So it might take a little longer, not always, but in most cases it could take 2-3 months. We've had sales here that took up to 1.5 years to close, just because the bank wasn't getting us what we needed and it took forever to get it approved. Pre-foreclosure means the owner is in default. However, there's enough money to pay the loan. So you're still dealing with the seller. You don't have to deal with the third party in the middle. But they are in foreclosure, so there's always a risk that the bank might foreclose on the home before we can close escrow. So time is of the essence. We have to move as quickly as we can. And not in all cases. It depends on the states. They might be at the beginning of the foreclosure process. that's typically a 4-month process before the bank will take their home. And in some cases, they'll postpone the sale and we'll be able to purchase the property. An REO property, we all heard about bank repos, right? We all went through that in this last decade. So there's still very few, not many, but there's still few bank-owned properties. When you're buying a bank-owned property, there's a few disclosures that you don't get through the sale. I'll discuss that in a bit, but you typically want to be a little more aggressive with your investigations because the bank never lived in the property. They might not disclose that perhaps somebody died in the property or there's defects in the home. You might have got a roof leak over here, so you might have a roof leak, so things you got to look after. Probate sale is when somebody passes away and they didn't have a living trust, so now they got to go to probate. So that could take a little longer in some cases. In other cases, there's no bank, no court approval required, so the sale might go a little quicker, but that's another type of sale that we have. And then, of course, I talked about HUD homes, so we do have a HUD sale. There's less documentation involved with a HUD home, but same disclosures. You'll get disclosures from us. You probably won't get them from HUD. HUD will just give you the minimal amount of disclosures required by law, but we will still give you disclosures as if it was a standard sale, except, again, HUD never lived in the property. It's the government, it's government owned, so there are certain questionnaires that you won't receive on a HUD home. So these are different types of sales that you'll have to deal with, okay? So different types of homes, different types of sales. So every situation might be a little different, and then we'll advise you as such, depending on what type of sale you're running into. Okay, so now that you guys know that, so when you're looking for a house, obviously everybody has different taste, right? Wants and needs. You might want a big house, a small house. Location is important. We always say location, location, location. Has anybody heard that before? I'm sure most of you guys have heard that. That's probably the most important thing when buying a house. Do you want to live behind the railroad tracks? Do you want to live right next to the freeway? Do you want to live in front of a school? What happens in a school every morning and every afternoon? Traffic, right? So just things to think about. Right, yeah. So, again, we all have different tastes. Hey, you might have kids, perhaps you don't work, and that's the best thing for you right now, while your kids are grown. So, you want to narrow down your city. Occasionally we'll get calls from buyers and they'll say, well, I don't care where. I'll take Victorville, I'll take Menifee, and I'll take Banning, and I'll take, Palm Springs. They're like all over the place, all over the map, right? For the most part, what city you want to buy in, right? So, again, we have folks migrating over here from Orange County, LA. They've never been out here, but, we'll probably tell them, hey, your best deals are in Hemet, San Jacinto. If you don't want to be too far out, let's go to Paris or Moreno Valley. You're a little closer to LA, but you're going to pay an average of $30,000 to $50,000 more for a home. Or if you want to stay in Riverside, that's about another $50,000 jump, right? So it's all up to the buyer. What's in your budget? How much money do you want to spend on a monthly basis, right? So again, it is important that you narrow your preference, but if you don't know the areas, it might be wise for you to preview the neighborhoods yourself, or I'm sure these guys would be glad to go out with you and show you around the neighborhoods, right? See what you like. Again, keep in mind your commute to work, commute to schools, to shopping centers, perhaps hospitals. I don't know. There's a lot of things you got to think of. Okay, so in Moreno Valley, man, the traffic's getting really bad now. I lived here when I was 2 or 3 years old, and of course it was all dirt right back then, in the 70s. But now it's getting crazy, especially this last decade. I don't even want to get on the 215 freeway nowadays. It's so much traffic. So keep in mind, getting from Rancho Belago over here to the freeway, that could be a 20-30 minute commute nowadays in the morning. So just something to think about. And of course, personal factors. Do you want a rural zone where you can have animals, chickens, or do you want to be, in a residential neighborhood? Do you want to live in a gated community? Do you want to pay homeowners association? A lot of different factors you got to look into. Okay. Do you want a swimming pool? Do you not? Keep in mind all the expenses. A pool's going to cost whatever, $80, $150 a month. And cleaning and chemicals and all that good stuff, maintenance. So, also, Many people don't know this, maybe some of you guys do, but when you buy a property, you have to pay property taxes right to the government, to the County of Riverside, and all houses are not alike when it comes to property taxes. Okay, this is one important factor that's going to affect your monthly mortgage payment. So we have something called Melrose or special assessment. Has anybody heard that? The Melrose. You know, Melrose is just a higher tax rate. Okay, almost everyone in California pays about 1% in property taxes. 1 to 1 1/4. That's our base tax. It's really 1%, but you know, there's some small special assessments there. But everybody pays about 1%. Now, depending on the neighborhood that you buy in, you might go from paying, you know, $100 or $80 a year in special assessments, and this could go up as high as $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year in special assessments. Okay. Now, is there a big difference between $100 and $4,000 a year in special assessments? Yes, right? So you're talking about an average of $200 to $300 more a month when you have special assessments, okay? So you can buy right here in our neighborhood, low tax, and pay 1%. A $300,000 house is $3,000 a year in property taxes. You go up north or probably even up to the east side of town, and now you're paying $4,000. So that's about a $200 to $300 a month difference in your mortgage payment. So if you go to your lender and your lender tells you, hey, you're qualified for a $300,000 house, right? You might qualify for a $300,000 house in this neighborhood, but once you go back east over here, then you don't qualify for $300,000. Now you only qualify for about $270, $260. Okay, so you know I coach my agents to tell you that, hey, even your lender should tell you, you know, this estimate is based on a 1.25 tax rate. Okay, so what I really look at is how much do you qualify for on a monthly payment. So if your lender tells me you qualify for a $2,000 mortgage payment, then I can do the math and tell you, hey, you know what? The payment on this house is about $2,200, so you're over a couple $100. So we got to go on the other side. So in other words, we'll have to coach you and tell you, hey, we got to stick to this neighborhood, or you know, not necessarily this neighborhood, but this community, okay? Because all these other communities have Melrose and they have high taxes. I spoke about HOA earlier. Your homeowners association will impact your monthly payments as well. Okay, so if you're paying, let's say, Marino Sunnymead Ranch, you know, $108. I think it went up now. So $108. That will impact your payment. So again, if they qualified you for $300,000 in a non-association area, if you try to go and buy a house there, you'd probably only qualify for $290. Okay, $295. Something to keep in mind. I mentioned the pool already, the additional expenses. There might be some areas, if you're buying in a rural area, where you might have a septic tank. There's some areas that look, not so much here in Moreno Valley, but you go to Fontana or Rialto, you try to buy a house, a tract home, and there's a lot of tract homes out there that have a septic tank. Okay? You know, septic tanks, I mean, they're cheaper than having sewer, because you got to pay a sewer fee to the city every month, right? $20, $30, $40 a month. Septic tanks, you can pump it every 3 or 5 years and spend only $200 to $300 for one pump, so it might be cheaper. The drawback with the septic tank is that if it goes bad, you're going to have to fix it yourself, and it could cost you, I don't know, bless you, $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, $12,000, you know, to get it replaced or repaired. So that's the only drawback. When you buy a house that has a septic tank, it will get certified. It must get certified in order to get a loan. So you know, they'll go out there and pump some water through it, make sure the water's seeping underground, and make sure that it's operating. However, most companies don't guarantee that it's going to work tomorrow. They'll tell you it's working right now, but I can't guarantee that it's going to be working tomorrow. But something to keep in mind, okay? Septic tank. And then the same thing with wells. If you have a well, you won't run into a lot of those out here, but if there is a well, same thing. It's got to get certified. They got to pump water, make sure there's no bacteria in there, make sure there's no anything that's going to harm you. You know, there's certain laboratory tests that have to get done in order to make sure it meets minimal requirements. So just some important facts. There's so many facts. These are just some that will affect your pocket and your transaction. Okay. So one more, propane gas. This you might see in areas where there's no gas lines. You're going to have a propane gas. You know, your appliances are going to work just as well. The only thing is propane's more expensive than your natural gas. You might pay double, triple what you would spend on a natural gas. You know, depending on the season. Like right now, propane gas is expensive in the winter. It's a lot more expensive in the winter. You try to get a propane gas filled with 200 gallons, and you'll spend like $500-600, on a tank that's going to last you 2 to 3 months, for your average household, 3 to 5 people. So I have one more thing here: easements and right-of-way. You don't see a lot of this with tract homes, but there might be properties where you have an easement. Easement means that you got to go through someone else's property to get to yours, but an easement gives you the legal right to drive through your neighbor's property per se. Okay, that's one type of easement. Every house has easements for utilities. A utility company can put their their water meter and their gas meter and whatever meter you have inside your home. So that's also an easement, but they run with every property unless you don't want utilities, but you have to have utilities. But the one you got to be concerned about is making sure you have legal access to your property. All right, so if you have a bigger lot, usually that's the case. There's very few properties up here on the north side, a few on the east side that do have easements. Perhaps your lot doesn't sit right in front of the street; it's a little bit behind it. And flag lots are very common, where you have we call it a flag lot because it looks like a flag. You got like a big rectangle on the top and then just a little stripe on the side. That's your access to get into your property. So something else to be concerned about. When you hire the right real estate agent, you almost don't even have to think about these things. A good agent's going to point these things out as they come with every property. So, of course, you got to do your due diligence, but for the most part, a good agent's going to walk you through step by step. The residential purchase agreement it pretty much explains all of this. I'll talk about disclosures in a bit so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. But before we get there, let me tell you about online searches. Who's gone online to look for property already? Has anybody called any of the agents online to see if it's available, or you haven't gotten to that point yet? Yeah. Has anybody ever ran into a property and they tell you, oh, it's sold already, or it's not for sale? No? Yeah. That happens. If you go online, let's say you got Realtor.com, Trulia, Zillow, Redfin. There's so many sites out there. Okay. All these sites are not real estate companies. Okay, Redfin is though, but all these companies here, they are not real estate companies. They're platforms that we as realtors can pay a fee. They're marketing companies. Okay, we'll pay money to be on the Zillow website so that when you click on a property, my face shows up, and then you call me and I get you guys as a client, right? So the people you see online is not necessarily the listing agent. They are a real estate agent, hopefully, but they're not the listing agent of the property. But in many cases, you'll see properties that are showing up active that aren't. You'll see properties that are off the market, they're not on the market. If someone's in foreclosure, unfortunately, it shows up in this site as an auction property. Why? Because it will become an auction property. If you don't get current with your mortgage payment, it's going to be an auction property. We'll go to trustee sale. But it's not necessarily for sale. So all the information these companies get is either from public records or from our website. We control the MLS. We are the source of that information. We have our own multiple listing service that you don't have access to, but we do give you a list of properties that hit the market. And our information is going to be down to the second. Okay. Sometimes these companies, depending on their refresh rate, their information might be delayed and might not be up to speed or as accurate. Okay. But Google Maps, it's always a good function. I don't know if you've been on Google Maps, but if you're looking for homes, I always recommend that clients click on the Google Maps and just kind of do a 360. You can see what the other neighbors' homes look like. From the satellite image, you can see if, I talked about railroad tracks, you can see if it's located behind the railroad tracks or next to a school or near a freeway or near a park, near a hospital, near shopping centers. So it's a really neat tool when we're out there looking for homes, Even us as real estate agents. I mean, if I know that you don't want to be next to whatever, I'll go on Google Maps. And we have direct access to it through our MLS. All I got to do is click on the listing, and then I click See Google Maps or See Google Street View, and boom, we're there. So we're already linked to that automatically. But anyways, if you are doing a search online, nothing wrong with it. Just tell, your agent, hey, Nacho, I saw a house on Eucalyptus Avenue. Can you look into it? There will be information that you don't have access to. Like how do I show this property? Is it owner occupied? Is it tenant occupied? Do they want cash offers only? You're going to run into that sometimes where they want cash only. If there's a tenant, sometimes there's tenants and you can buy the house, but you might have to wait 6 or 8 or 9 months before you can close escrow. So that's the type of information you might not have access to. So you'll still need your real estate agent in order to find out, the details, and that's what we're here for, right? So, but trust your agent when we tell you, that house is not active, it's not for sale, okay? Because sometimes as a buyer, you might say, well, Nacho's lying to me. I saw it on Zillow, so, if you don't trust your agent, you got to find one that you can trust, because, they're here to be honest and upfront with you. So if you can't trust your agent, you got to find someone else, you have to trust your agent. All right, and then of course viewing, I spoke about viewing appointments. As real estate agents, we like to make appointments in advance. Occasionally we'll get a call and people will say, hey, I want to go look at a property, right? Can we go right now? I'll try, and if I got nothing else to do, we'll call the agent and we'll try to get an appointment scheduled. But for the most part, we try to schedule appointments in advance, 2-3 days, at least 1 day in advance. Some people will want a 24-hour notice, and aside from that, we have to plan our showings. So, if we're going to go and look at 10 homes, I got to know if I'm going to be here at 10 a.m. and 10:30 over here, and at 11, 11:30. So what we do is we will coordinate all appointments according to location. If I know I have to drive from Sunnymead Ranch all the way south to Cremeria, I know it's going to take me 20 minutes to get there, so I'm not going to say, I'm going to show this house at 10 and then at 10:15 the other one. I need to space it out at least 20-30 minutes. And I have to allow enough time for you to walk into the property and take a look at it, right? You don't want to run in there and just rush in and out, You got to go in there and take a good look at it. A good agent will typically, while you're looking at the home, we'll be paying attention to details that might affect the sale, I mentioned the ceiling stains, roof leak, I might peek underneath the drawers on the cabinet and see if there's any water leak. I'll pay attention to perhaps additions to a property. Sometimes additions are very obvious, You got the nice finish in the wall, and then all of a sudden you got this crappy finish, with, the texture's all smeared or whatever. So any indication that the home has been modified, these things we need to know up front, because it might cause delays in the sale, or we might have to get an engineer to come and reassess the whole property, and they might even have to draw blueprints and get city approval in order to put that back the way it was. So there's a lot of things that a good agent's going to do for you while you're out there looking at the home, and we're going to point these things out to you. Okay, maybe public record says it's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and then you show up and there's 3 bedrooms. You got to question the agent. You'll see some errors in public records, but that's something we'll help you find out if it's legitimate or not. In some cases, you're going to run into properties that the owner wants you to do make an offer subject to inspection. It's not the greatest thing. You usually want to see a house before you decide if you want to offer, right? But, in some cases we can't help this. The agent's going to want an offer. So we might have to spend, 10, 15 minutes making an offer before we can get in. So you might run into this, 1 out of 100 properties you're going to see that. It's not going to be very common. But if it's a house that I think is going to meet your needs, it's well worth just sending an offer. Okay? And then once you see it, if you don't like it, you just withdraw your offer, or amend your offer. You might say, hey, you know what, I offered 300, but after looking at it, I'm going to drop my offer to 290. That's what you do typically on a drive-by. So again, that's all on viewing properties. And make sure your agent is with you at all times. Okay. I know sometimes you'll probably run into an open house. If you do go to an open house, just make sure that tell these people that you have a real estate agent, okay? We're going to be working really hard to accomplish, your goal, to be a homeowner. And a lot of realtors are very unethical. They'll say, oh, don't go work with Nacho, he's only been in the business for a year. He only sold 2 homes last year. They'll be very unethical. And I mean, if you have common sense, you're going to say, no, this person sounds a little fishy. I don't want to work with him. I'm going to stick to my agent. So just let them know, hey, I have an agent. But the best thing to do is just go out with your real estate agent and take a look at the homes. All right, so if you go out and look at property and there's a house that you like, typically we'll want to go back and take another second look at it, or perhaps even a third look at the property, right? Just to make sure you really like the home. But let's say you saw it once and you're ready to make an offer. You're going to have an opportunity to go back and do inspections. We'll talk about that in a bit. But as far as writing an offer, we use standard contracts that are provided to us by the California Association of Realtors, okay? we have attorneys that we pay, on an ongoing basis to make sure that all the contracts are up to standards, making sure that it meets all the requirements, all the legal requirements, and that we're all protected. And contracts are meant to protect both sides, not only you as a buyer, but the seller. So again, we're going to explain the contract to you so you know what you're signing. It is a legal agreement, but you're always free to go meet with an attorney if you'd like. If you're not sure what you're signing, you have the freedom to go and talk to an attorney. I think a good agent will make you feel comfortable and explain the terms on the contract, and I think it'll be sufficient for you to move forward with signing an agreement. Very rarely a client will take an agreement to a real estate attorney. If you make an offer on a bank property, a real estate owned property, they might have their own contract. It's not going to be our traditional contract, but they're very, very similar. There's a few disclosures that a bank has to make to a home buyer, okay, just because they foreclosed on the property. So again, we will explain those differences to you. Always, when you sign an agreement, you must be provided with a copy, okay? Don't sign a contract with anyone, with Nacho or Gio, if you don't get a copy. You sign your contract, you get a copy. If you sign a contract electronically, has anybody used DocuSign or any form of digital signatures? They're getting very common. I mean, we probably do maybe 25–30% of our transactions now with electronic signatures, right? So if you do, you'll get a copy automatically. As soon as everybody's done signing, you'll get a copy to your email, okay? I ask my clients that they meet with you, my agents, that they meet with you at least the first time so they can explain the agreement, right? If that deal doesn't go through, once you make the second offer, at least we've already explained the contract to you. We're going to have a different address on the new offer, we're going to have maybe a different price, but at least all the terms in the contract should be very, very similar. Okay? All right, so when you make an offer, you will have to make a deposit, all right? The deposit, it's not legally required. You could say, I want to buy this house, but I'm not giving you a deposit. But most sellers are not going to take you seriously if you don't make a deposit. Okay? Now, how much? Typically it's about 1% of the sale. So if you make an offer on a $300,000 house, usually you want a $3,000 deposit. It could be $1,000, it could be $500. So depending on your financials, I don't know how much money you're going to have in the bank, but if you don't want to put too much money into escrow, then we can reduce it. Now that money, we don't require a check anymore. I forgot to take that out, but now that money is going to go straight into an escrow company. Okay, you probably heard in the past that somebody opened escrow. So when you open escrow, you got your buyer's agent, and then you got the seller's agent, and then they're in the middle. They're going to collect all the information from the seller, from the buyer, and once all those conditions are met, then that's when we close escrow. But they are also involved in collecting all the money, from all parties, from your lender. They pay off the bank. Again, they collect your deposit. They pay the termite company. They pay your lender. So they're going to be collecting all the money. So we don't get your money. We do not collect your money. In some cases, you're going to need a cashier's check, but in most cases, we do a wire. So you wire money to the escrow company. We give you something called wiring instructions. And again, we'll guide you every step of the way. We got to get rid of this one. Not so here. Cash. We don't deliver checks anymore. We used to hold a check and we would hold it on cash until your offer was accepted. We don't do that anymore. So money goes straight to escrow. So that's it right there. And of course, your money doesn't go into escrow unless your offer has been accepted. Our standard contract states that the money goes to escrow within 3 days. So if you make an offer and you can't get your money into escrow within 3 days, you're risking cancellation. So the seller might say, hey, you promised to deliver your money within 3 days. If you don't, I'm going to cancel on you. So you'll get something called a notice to perform, and they will cancel on you if they wish. So there's no reason why we can't get the money into the bank within 3 days. Okay, so let me back up once. Even though that money is yours, that's part of your down payment, the deposit money, if you fail to close escrow because you breached the contract, you could risk losing that money, okay? I will tell you, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I've never lost a deposit, okay? If you do the right things throughout the transaction, you should not risk losing your deposit. Now, if you cancel last minute for no reason, which it's happened to us before, where you, just for whatever reason, you change your mind, okay? I had a buyer, the last one I can remember when the market crashed back in '07. You know, he was in escrow and he saw that everything was crumbling. He said, I'm out of here. And he was ready to close. We would have closed within 2 days. And they did try to keep his deposit. I fought it and we got it back. But that's that's one reason why you could cancel. You know, if you feel uncertain about the market, or some cases you'll find a nicer house for less. It might be worth losing your deposit, but again, we're going to fight so that you don't lose your deposit, okay? In many cases, I tell my clients, if you lose your deposit, I will pay you the money. You know, I'm not certain you're not going to lose your money, but you know, it might be a little bit of a battle towards the end because the seller needs to sign off on the release of that deposit. Okay, you just don't get it back because we don't have it, the seller doesn't have it, escrow has it. So escrow is going to need instructions from both sides to release that deposit money. But again, just keep in mind that if you breach the contract with no, not in good faith, then you might lose your deposit, okay? So with that said, you might not want to give a $3,000 or $5,000 deposit. You might want to try to get a $1,000 deposit into escrow, see if the seller will accept, okay? Okay, so now once your offer gets accepted, it doesn't mean the house is yours. It doesn't mean you're forced to buy that house, okay? All that means is you got one foot in the door, okay? Now you got to get that second foot in the door. So through that process, you're going to have the right to do inspections on the property, okay, and do your due diligence. So you're given the opportunity to hire a home inspector, okay? They go in there, they check all the windows, the plugs, the doors, the air conditioning, the heater, go up in the roof, make sure there's no cracked tiles, make sure there's no roof leaks. It's a general home inspection, okay? Now, if something comes up, let's say there is a stain on the ceiling, the inspector is not going to tell you what it's going to take to fix it. So you might have to bring in a roofer to come and take a look at it and say, hey, you know what, it's no big deal, it's a cracked tile, you know, $100. We got to do some drywall repair, another $200. So at least you know what you're getting into, okay? Now, I'll talk about requests for repairs here on the last one. So you might bring in a roofer or a plumber, or perhaps the air conditioning doesn't work, okay? You can bring someone else to take a look at it, right? You're typically going to have 17 days. Our standard contract says you have 17 days to bring an inspector and inspect the property, okay? If for any reason you couldn't bring an inspector within 17 days, we'll have to request an extension. We call it an extension of time addendum for inspections, okay? It's very common that a seller will request, instead of 17 days, that you do an inspection in 7 days or 10 days. So you might run into that. So if you do agree to 10 days, make sure you request your inspection as soon as possible, because they might be busy. They might not be able to schedule you in until 3 or 5 days later. So again, this time is negotiable. You can say 21 days, but if you try to exceed 17 days, that's not going to look good on your offer. You usually want to reduce the 17 days to a week. So let's say something's broken, right? You don't have to bring a plumber, you don't have to bring a roofer. You can just go back to the seller and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, will you fix this for me? You know, if you fix it for me, I'll move forward with the sale or the purchase. If not, I'm going to back out. Okay, that's your right as a buyer. So if something's broken, you have the right to ask them to fix it. But there's no guarantee that the seller is going to fix anything. Okay, the seller is not obligated to fix anything. So it's all negotiable. Okay. But each of you has a right to back out, if they don't fix whatever you want repaired, okay? And this is very common. The request for repairs, we use that on almost all transactions. Something goes wrong, I had a brand new house just 2 weeks ago where some of the electrical plugs weren't working. They weren't working, okay? And the owner, I think, knew, he just didn't tell us, but the inspector caught it, so they brought an electrician, and it turns out that one of the outlets in the wall, I won't point down here because you can't see it, but one of the outlets in the wall, they drywalled over it. And they're all connected in series, so if one of them's missing, so all the other ones don't work, so they actually found it pretty quick. They say, hey, there's got to be something here in the middle that's not connected. So, they located it, they put a hole on the wall, connected the outlet, all the other outlets were working. So, brand new house, okay? I had a brand new house back in 2005 out in Hemet. Dishwasher was leaking. It damaged the floor, it wet the cabinet, so we made the builder come back and replace that cabinet because my buyer said, hey, it's a brand new house. I don't want a cabinet that's damaged. They fixed it was tile flooring, so the flooring didn't get damaged. Welcome. So again, something you'll have to deal with, okay? Now, if the seller says, no, I don't want to do any repairs, and you like that house so bad that you don't care, you want to buy it, then again, we'll do further research to make sure it's nothing major, and you'll go ahead and buy the house as is. Now, the lender might come back and say, well, I won't let you buy that house without a heater because it's required by law. So there might be certain items that have to get fixed. So if the seller doesn't fix that for you, you might have to pay, out of your pocket to fix it. Just depends how bad you want that house, okay? Even as agents, we want to keep you happy, right? So we might say, you know what, let me take some money from my commission and I'll fix it for you, okay? So I'm not speaking for these guys, but every deal's a little different, but sometimes we got to pitch in as well to make a deal happen, right? So, and we're willing to do that. And hopefully it's not the whole roof, we'll lose money. So you cut quite a few slides from the presentation, huh?
We cut some, yeah.
Yeah, quite a few. There's a lot more here. This presentation, I've been giving this presentation for, I don't know, like 15 years for down payment assistance programs, okay? If you're gonna qualify for a loan where you're getting down payment assistance, they're probably gonna require that you take a class, an all-day class, right? It might be an 8-hour class. You might be able to do parts of it online. So anyways, I volunteer my time occasionally as a real estate agent. When you take that class, you're going to have a lender for an hour. You're going to have a real estate agent for an hour or two. You're going to have a financial advisor. You're going to have an insurance company. You're going to have a home inspector. And we all come and talk to you about the whole home buying process, okay? This is a very condensed version of a home buying process, but there's just so much involved. But again, if everybody does their part, you should be happy at the end. Okay? But anyways, we're getting close to the closing section here. Once you've done your due diligence, meaning that you did all your inspections, you've been in contact with your lender, they've got your loan approved, they appraised the property, you did your home inspection, you looked into the neighborhood, you're sure you want to live in that neighborhood. Towards the end, you're going to sign your loan documents, your mortgage documents, okay? And I'll let the lender speak a bit about that, but there's a process that we have to follow. There's a timeline that we have to follow towards the end, okay? Because usually during the transaction, you might not hear as much from the lender as you will from us, okay? As your real estate agent, the way I put it is, we're the bus driver, okay? So in a transaction, you probably have, I don't know, a good 30, 40 people involved. It's not just your real estate agent and your lender. There's about 30, 40 people involved. But we're the bus driver. We're the ones communicating with everybody in the bus, okay? So you're going to hear from us more than you are from your lender and anybody else. There's going to be people you won't even talk to, okay? So, so once we're in agreement, everything's all lined up, we're going to have your mortgage loan documents. You're going to meet with the notary. You're going to get them notarized. They're going to make it clear that your mortgage payment is going to be whatever, $2,000 a month, including your principal, your interest, your mortgage insurance, your hazard insurance. They're going to disclose all that to you, along with all the fees that you're going to have to pay. And they're going to tell you, okay, in order to close this deal, you got to bring in $10,000 to escrow. So, you probably already made $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 deposit. So you might need another 10 to close. And they're going to instruct you to wire that money into escrow, okay? And then once you wire your money, your lender's going to wire their portion of the money, right? You got your down payment, they have their loan. If you're doing 100% financing, you might not have to bring any additional money. You might be even getting a check back from from the escrow company, especially if you had a large deposit. So again, your lender's going to discuss all the fees with you, so you know exactly what you're getting into. And even though I'm talking about the end, your lender's going to discuss these fees with you right at the beginning of the transaction, okay? Probably before you even have an offer accepted. They're going to tell you, hey, here's what it's going to take for you to buy this house. You're going to need $10,000, $12,000, and here's a breakdown, okay? Because again, anything related to money has nothing to do with us as a real estate agent. That's on the lending end of it. I want to make sure as a good agent that the lender did their job, so I might request a loan estimate from the beginning. So I might show it to you and say, hey, is this what the lender showed you at the beginning? Or I might even make you cite it. You can say, yep, that's what they told me. My payment's going to be $2,000. I'm going to need another $10,000 before I can close. So let's go forward, right? My interest rate was quoted at whatever, 5%, 4.5%. And the reason I say quoted is because that could change. Your lender will explain that to you, but your interest rate, unless they lock the rate, it could change. And in some cases, they'll lock the rate and then the lock expires. They might lock it for 3 weeks or a month, and then it expires and the rate might change. So that's something you really need to talk with your lender. But a good realtor will keep you up to date with that as well. Okay, even though that has nothing to do with that. I just want to make sure everybody in my bus is doing their job, right? I'm the bus driver, remember? So I got to make sure everybody behind me is doing their job. So once you bring your money, once your lender brings their money, the escrow company and the title company are going to give us the green light to close the escrow, okay? So what happens when you close the escrow, all right? Your lender has your loan documents. They gave them to the escrow company. We have the originals. So they get verified by the lender. They get verified by the escrow company. And then the title company also gets those documents. Those documents have to be recorded along with the grant deed, okay? The grant deed is your title to the home, okay? That grant deed says you own the house. So we have to make that public, okay? We're going to make public that you are the new owner of this property, and we're also going to make public that you have a loan on the property, all right? So those documents get recorded with the county recorder's office. So if you buy a house here in Moreno Valley, those documents get recorded with Riverside County, all right? So we send those documents to record, and then the magic word is confirmation, okay? Once the county records your documents, they send back a confirmation to the title company. Okay. Then the title company gives me a call and says, hey, we're confirmed. So when we call you guys and say we got confirmation on your closing, congratulations, the house is legally yours. Right? So that's in a nutshell. Now, confirmation doesn't mean you're getting your keys that day. Okay. So when you write an offer, it's very common that you give the seller 2 to 3 days to move out. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks. All right, so when you're writing an offer, make sure you ask your agent, hey, am I going to get my keys the day I close escrow, or am I going to get my keys, 2 or 3 days later? All right, so when you get the confirmation, again, it doesn't mean you're getting your key. It just means you legally own the house. But you've also legally allowed the old owner to stay there 2 or 3 days. You get that? So that's also in the contract. But this is a confirmation that the home is yours. So. In a nutshell, that's the home buying process. I don't know if anybody has any questions you might want to ask before I present the lender. Did I put you guys to sleep? Yeah, it's not super complicated, but it is important that you take the right steps and ask the right questions throughout the transaction. Just to tell you, when we write an offer, it's very common that we'll spend an hour or even 2 hours explaining the purchase agreement to you. I did this, and I don't know, what did I spend, 30 minutes? But I could spend at least 1 hour explaining the purchase agreement to you. And once we explain the purchase agreement to you, you'll understand a lot of these points that I just made in my presentation. Now, after you, I think you took this slide out from here, the disclosure portion of it. Once you make an offer, you're going to get a bunch of documents from the seller. We call them disclosures. The owner has to disclose, hey, has anything broken in the past? Is there anything that's currently broken? Did anybody die in the property in the last 3 years? Has your house, suffered a fire or any earthquake damage? There's a series of questions that the seller is asked. And that information is going to get presented to you. So if you see anything in those documents, you can come back and say, you know what, after reviewing this documentation, I don't want to buy this house. Or perhaps, there's a question here that I'm not too clear about. Can you please go back to the seller and ask him a little bit more details, I'll give you one example. The law, as far as a death in the property, I don't know if any of you guys are concerned about it. I wouldn't be concerned. My wife would, But I wouldn't be concerned. Many folks are. And yes, by law, you have to disclose if somebody passed away in the property. But they have to disclose if somebody passed away in the last 3 years. Okay. Guess what? If you go back and tell them, hey, did anybody die more than 3 years ago? Now, by law, they have to tell you, well, yeah, 10 years ago, my mom or my dad or my wife or whatever passed away. Okay. So there's certain things that we have to coach you. And a good agent will always ask the seller, hey, if it's a concern to you. I always ask my client, is this a concern to you? Because I could go back and ask if somebody passed away in excess of the 3 years. You know, somebody might mention, well, there's an unpermitted bedroom, you know, in this property. Well, we might have to go and ask, well, is this unpermitted bedroom attached to the existing home, or is it an unpermitted bedroom within the home? You know, maybe they just put up a wall. You know, a wall, you know, it's probably a non-bearing wall. It's not as huge of a deal as if you added to the structure. You know, we can go back and ask more questions. Well, who did the work? Was it a licensed contractor? Was it a handyman? Did you do it yourself? You know, so there's just so many questions that come about on a transaction. And again, that's what a real estate agent is here for you to do. You know, to make sure you don't get into trouble. There's something called a preliminary title report. We will review that for you, and we will determine if there's anything that we need to investigate any further. That document will tell you if there's any liens against the house, if there's any title issues. When you're buying a house with the loan, you almost can't close a house with issues. They have to get resolved, okay? Especially if it's like a city lien or anything else. But again, there's a lot of items that we'll have to look into. If there's association, we have something called CC&Rs, covenant, conditions, and restrictions. So we need to make sure you review those and make sure you're in agreement. You might buy a house in an association, and they might say, hey, you know, you can't work on your cars on the weekends, you know, or any day for that matter, out in the street or in the driveway. It's got to be inside your garage. If you have a balcony, they might not want anything such as, you know, storage baskets in your balcony. Sometimes they don't even want a barbecue grill, you know, viewed from downstairs. They're trying to make the community look a little bit better, you know, than some other communities. So they're just the list goes on and on and on, you know. So that's why I say when you're committed to buying, it's always important that you review your purchase agreement. And there's a 14-page document called a statewide buyer and seller advisory. It's statewide, so some of those items might not apply to us. You know, it might be homes up by the beach. It might be historic homes in older cities. But for the most part, that statewide disclosure is a very good document that will tell you what to look for in a purchase. So it might be prudent for you guys to ask your real estate agent, hey, you know, that statewide disclosure, do you mind if I get a copy for it? Let me start reading up on it. Because that might guide you into finding the best home for you and what things to keep your eyes open for. You know, they'll talk about marijuana, believe it or not. You know, marijuana is an issue now; it's legal, so it'll tell you what's allowed, what's not allowed, and you know, perhaps you don't want to live next door to somebody that's growing marijuana. Maybe you do, and that's your choice. Dogs, neighbor has dogs. You know, do you want to live next door to somebody that has dogs? You don't. I'm sure by now I've already, you know, raise some questions, you know, or alerts. Yeah, criminal activity. We do have access to crime reports. Good question, by the way. You know, that we do have access to crime reports. You can go to the FBI website, or there's a lot of companies out there that put out reports. I will tell you that some reports will not be accurate. I've seen inaccuracies in reports. I sold a lot of bank repos when the market crashed. You know, I used to represent, you know, banks out there, a lot of banks, and I was required to submit a crime report. But sometimes I noticed that they weren't accurate. Or you would go to one website and then another website. Yesenia, do you need to come to your office? Feel free. No? Okay, sorry. So if you are concerned, I think everybody should be concerned. And at least know where you're going to live, right? So definitely, crime report, we could give you a proper report for that particular not necessarily the home. I don't know if you meant the home or the neighborhood, but
the neighborhood.
Usually it's the neighborhood, the city, or the zip code. You can check out the crime activity. But if there's been a crime at the property, you know, Google's amazing. You type in the address in Google and just kind of browse through the pages, you might find something about the house. You know? Unfortunately, we had a couple of people passed away in Paris a couple of weeks ago. You know, mom and a daughter, unfortunately. You know, may they rest in peace. But there was a fire, and they burnt the house burnt, and they passed away. The dad and the son managed to escape, but that house, I just saw that it went up for sale a couple of days ago out in Paris. But you know, if you Google it, you're going to see a lot of stories about that house now. Unfortunate tragedy right there. But I did have a client Google a house south of Moreno Valley, and they found out that there was, you know, prostitution and all kinds of stuff going on in that house. But that came about just by Googling the address. So
The real estate.
what's that?
It's not your responsibility.
Yeah, it's not our responsibility as agents, but man, you know, I cross the line a lot in a good way to try to help out the client. I would hate for you to buy a house or anybody here and then a year later say, man, you know, Eduardo or Gio, they sold me this house, you know, I hate them. That's the last thing we want, you know. We want happy clients, you know, and I mean it from my heart. We want happy clients that are going to be glad that we got you that property, you know. But even though it's not our responsibility, you know, we try to go above and beyond our duties to make sure that we did our due diligence. Because you're right, you're going to see on that contract that it states it's you, the buyer's responsibility to do this and that and that. But again, I think as professionals, we should do that. I mean, it should be on the contract that we should be responsible for that. But you know, the least we could do is guide you. You know, you might see that, hey, it's your responsibility to go to the city to make sure there's permits on this property or permits on this pool. You know, what's it going to cost me to say, hey, just come to my office, we'll go together. Let's go to the city. I've been there too many times. I know who to talk to. You know, and it just makes me look a lot better. So, but yeah, there's so much to know. So, again, any other questions? Are you all confused? No? Or y'all feel a little? Raise your hand if you feel a little bit better now as far as buying a home. So, and you'll feel a lot better once we sit down one-on-one and listen to your personal needs. So, Gio, I'll hand it back to you, and you can introduce your lender. So, I'll be around anyways, but the lender's gonna talk about financing. Right? Can't buy a house without money unless you have cash or hit the lottery tomorrow or tonight. Yeah, so. Hey, that happened to me once already. I had a client, he hit the lotto and he bought a house cash. So, all right, I'll give it back to Gio. Thanks, guys.
Give it up for.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So what we're gonna do is, if anybody needs to use the restroom or anything right now, take a little break, get some water here. Why don't we take a little, like 10-minute? Okay, and then we'll come back and we'll continue it because it's probably take another 20 minutes.
Yeah, ours is going to be really quick, guys. 20 minutes, 25 max.
We're just gonna talk about the programs and you know, the process just for you to know. Okay, we're not gonna go into too much detail on that. So
It's going to be fast.
anybody wanna just take a little break and then we'll go ahead and oh yes, not you. There's the key.
Just a flyer. I'm going to go over most of it. You want one in Spanish, English? That's going to be the first one. That will be the last. Yeah. And then this. This.
And then at the end, I would just
It goes over the camera.
so we got about 10 minutes?
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Hey boss, can I have the microphone?
I left it on top of the.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. I think someone has the key already. So it's hallway on the right side. The first door on the right. All right, guys, so let's continue on. Now, this is the most important part of it all, I think. And this is the one that we need to initiate and find out, you know, first of all, what kind of programs do we qualify for? When I started looking for my own home, I had no idea how to start. So I was very dependent on the advice of a random lender. Here, what you're getting off from here is actually knowing everything. So that way, if someone tells you something different, oh, you know, I caught this person. I mean, I was told about something different. So this way, you get the knowledge here, and that way you don't fall into mistakes that I made or some other people that got into a home and then they regretted it because they got a loan that was not 30 years, that it was 2 loans, one was a credit. They're like, don't worry, Giovanni, you got your loan right now, boom, and then suddenly you realize that it was a whole different thing that you didn't know about. So, you know, I like to conduct my business a certain way, an ethical way, and I like to form, you know, a relationship. I want to create a relationship so you guys can trust us. And I need someone to complement that. And I found these gentlemen here to, it's exactly what I'm looking for, because I want my clients to be serviced, you know, with a high standard. I've paired up with another lender, for an example, that has actually, hey Gio, I ran the credit, it's, you know, they're not ready. Or running into a lender who actually looks at your credit, is like, oh, I'm sorry, there's nothing, you know, for now we can't help you out. But they don't really guide you and actually give you a solution. So, you know, some people, they just get, what those lenders want is they want to go ahead and make that quick buck, okay? And if they see that they don't have, oh no, this guy doesn't qualify, you know, they'll just leave you, okay? With us, we embrace that. So if we come across that you're not ready yet, you know what? Now let's go ahead and create a plan, okay? And that way, like in 3 or 6 months, you're ready to go. These guys can do that. So they'll walk you through it, okay? And it's not like, okay, yeah, you're not ready yet, and then they just disappear. Before they were all nice and big smiles, like, hey, let's go ahead and get you going. And it's like, oh. With these guys, they'll go ahead and follow through, make sure that ultimately you will go ahead and get your home, okay? So that's why I look at you guys. This year, we'll make it your year to get your home, okay? So let's go ahead and introduce these great folks. I got Darren and Rafael, so they'll go ahead and talk to you. And also, by the way, if you feel comfortable, once we go one-on-one in Spanish, Rafael speaks in Spanish, so we can go ahead and do everything in Spanish. And of course, Darren will take care of, you know, of the English portion of it, okay? So let me go ahead and switch it over to you guys.
Thank you, guys. I'll introduce Darren. My name is Rafael Del Toro, and we both work for Cherry Creek Mortgage. Right now, we're going to teach you the easiest way to get your home or get you ready to get your home. Okay, there's a lot of ways, and then we're going to go through the process of how do you guys own your home. Okay, so in the middle of that, Darren's demo illustration here, you guys can stop us if you have questions. He's going to stop the process and just interact with us. Okay, we have plenty of stories to tell you and easy ways to get you guys a home. Okay, Darren's close.
Yeah, thank you everybody. We are happy to be here. Thanks to Gio, Ignacio, and Eduardo, and everybody here at AltaCore. Over the next 4 hours, we're gonna discover lots of. Now we're gonna make this fun. You know, a lot of this process can be overwhelming. It's our job to make it not overwhelming. You know, it's there's a lot of ways that you could organize and put together what the best financing options are for you. So the big part of that up front is us talking with you, finding out what's important to you, your family, your goals, your long-term financial goals, everything all together. And then we kind of tailor what we call mortgage planning with our clients and our realtor partners all together. So we're going to kind of go over a lot of things. I want this to be open so you guys can ask questions, kind of a group talk. We're going to share different stories about ways we can get people into homes, and we're going to kind of use this as a go through the slides a little bit, and if anything pops up, just raise your hand, and we'll keep this very casual and informative and kind of group. So Cherry Creek, we are from Cherry Creek Mortgage. We're a national company. We've funded $51.8 billion in loan volume for 2018. You know, over 800 employees. The reason I feel really blessed to work for this company is I know that when I talk to a client, I know that I can immediately call what's called an underwriter, which basically if there's a question I have based on your information or a client's information, I can say, you know what, this is so important to you, I'm gonna look into a couple things for you and I'm gonna call. So it's not like we're this massive company that you're going to ask me a question, you're gonna hear from me in 4 or 5 days, or either of us in 4 or 5 days. It's gonna be a matter of minutes. So I can call and find out answers quickly and make sure when I get back to you, it's gonna be the right information. You know, we have 32 years of experience. We are local, we're in Riverside, like 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
So, yeah, okay. So we're basically gonna break in the myths. Like, don't let these 2 myths hold you back from your dream home, you know? These are kind of the most common things that we see from people. And the myth 1 is, you know, you need 20% for a down payment. People are like, I don't have any funds saved up. You know, I could never buy a home. And that's not true. So we have a lot of families that we help where they can actually, we've gotten them into homes where they basically come in with $0 at closing. So basically the way it works is the state has a program where they will cover your down payment of 3.5% or 3%. So we'll talk about a few different loans. I don't want to swarm you with information, but there's like FHA, which is government-sponsored loans, and then there's conventional loans, which are like government enterprises, smaller businesses that will back the loan. But basically, this program will, if you have $0 saved up, it'll cover the down payment and most of the closing costs. And then when we work with our realtor partners, they can even have the seller cover at closing if there's $2,000 left over, whatever that amount might be, they'll cover it and you could come in with $0 at close. We just got a family into a $330,000 home. They came in with $0. It's a very nice lady, police officer. She got into the home and that was that. I mean, and it's a safe loan. It's a 30-year loan. It's fixed. You don't owe any money on, it's basically 3 loans, okay? But your full payment, like your monthly payment, including property taxes, mortgage insurance, all that kind of stuff is included on the first. So you don't pay the second or the third, okay? We can explain all the details later, but it's a safe loan. It is not due until you either refinance the loan, and at that point, you could have already gained equity. I mean, they say what the national average on appreciation on a home is, what, 3 to 6% over periods of time. So let's say you get into a home with 0 financing, and then at some point your financial situation changes, you want to refinance that home out of the down payment assistance loan, which you've made $50,000 on the home that you bought. So what you do at that point is you refinance the loan, you would be able to pay off that, get into a different loan. But that's kind of how it works. I don't want to flood you with information, but safe loan, good loan, you own the house, everything in there, okay? There's also low down payment options. So there's what's called an FHA loan, and FHA loans are 3.5% down. So 3.5% down payment and then closing costs on top of that. And I'll break down at the end, you know, what payments look like and kind of how closing costs are factored in and things like that. And then there's also conventional loans, which I said are government-sponsored businesses that will back the loan, and those go as low as 3%. So there are options for you out there, okay? For really all financing, that breaks that myth that you need 20%. And we'll get into like factors, what determines. I know you all have heard like interest rates and what all goes into that. And interest rate, you know, a big factor on that is what kind of occupancy, which Eduardo kind of covered. Is it going to be your primary house? Is it going to be a second house? There are all sorts of things that kind of determine, you know, what that would be. Now, for the down payment assistance that we're talking about, it's got to be your primary house. It's got to be, you got to have a 640 credit score or above. And the story I just told you at the 3:30 that we got the lady into the house, we did a 6-month credit plan with her. There's no cost to it. We did a 6-month, we raised her score like 85 points. She qualified and she got the home. So we do things like that. I mean, it really is in our hearts to help families and make it possible. It's not a matter of if, it's when. You know, we have a great team, and we've all kind of built the team we have so we can take the time to really help people. And that's really in our hearts for it.
And
So,
then along those lines, I know Eduardo talked briefly about when you put an offer, okay, you need at least, you know, let's say you have $1,000, $2,000, okay? If with this down payment assistance program, that money is to make an initial offer, okay? And then at the end, most of our deals that we're doing right now, you guys are getting your money back. So we'll teach you a way to get all of that back and how to go over it.
yeah, absolutely. And if anybody ever has any questions during this, just raise your hand. I want this to be,
Yeah.
you know, completely open. There are a lot of layers to this stuff, and I know it can be overwhelming. So my goal today is just to give you all, like maybe the light bulb goes off, and you're like, oh wow, like maybe it is closer than it can be, or maybe I could do this, or maybe we could sit down and work that out. So that's the way. So the myth number one, and also about down payments too, is sometimes, you know, sometimes if let's say you had 20% for a down payment, based on what you want your payment to be monthly, it might make more sense during our mortgage consultation up front to go, wow, you know, we might be able to save $10,000 more or so on putting money down to keep as like a nest or a savings, because $10,000 might only change my payment $55 to $65. You know, so if by saving money at close is going to help you long term, then that's something that we can explore too. You know, that's the importance of not just hearing your information and going, this is it, and then, you know, you're approved and buy the house. It's long-term financial goals and really seeing what makes sense for that. So any questions really briefly? You know, you do not need 20% to buy a house, so, okay. Myth number two is I need a 780 FICO score or higher to buy. So, you know, if someone's like, hey, my credit's just, you know, some things happened and unfortunately my credit score is lower, health reasons, whatever those reasons might be. Now, a huge factor in interest rate, okay, is going to be what your credit score is. So when we talk to someone initially and we run the credit and take a look at it, well, if it's lower, I mean, you'll hear, like for an FHA loan, certain lenders might say, you know, we can do a loan at 580 credit score or higher. Okay, now we can do that, and there's certain ways that we can make it work. The things that the advertisers maybe won't tell you is that if you have a 580 credit score, you've got to have a certain amount of reserves saved, or you've got to have more money in the bank, or things like that, you know. So a lot of times, if someone has a lower credit score, like we'll get them approved, and if we run, and I'll explain more about how we help credit, but if we run a report that says we can raise their score in 30 days, like 40 points, we'll do that when they get an offer accepted, and then while they're in the escrow period, and we'll raise their score, you know, whatever we can, and that might save them. Like one time we did that we saved somebody like $275 a month because we raised their score like 30 points in escrow, and we got it up, did what's called a credit supplement, and then when they closed, their payment was that much better. It was over $200 better. So there's ways that you can kind of do that. So credit score determines in a large point what your interest rate is. It usually works in about 20-point intervals. So 780 or higher is sterling, you know. Really 740 and up is, you know, the difference from 740 to 720 might be a little bit of a difference, like a half of an eighth or an eighth in our interest rate. 720 to 700 might see a little bit of a change. 7 to 680 and so on, moving down. So that's kind of how they look at that. But yeah, you can go as low as 580 and whatnot. So one of the things we do when we talk to a client up front and then we run credit is we'll look at the score. Let's say we've talked to somebody and it's what, like a, let's say it's a 540. Let's say it's a 540 credit score. What Cherry Creek invests in is basically they pay about $3 million a year for us to have access for no charge to our clients. We can take that 540 credit score or whatnot, put it into a system, and we can play with the numbers. So we can say, okay, if they pay this down $1,000, or if they remove this collection, or if we can play with all the different amounts. So, and it'll tell us in 1 month they'll get 30 points, in 6 months they'll get 100 points, or in a year they'll get this many points, and we can play with it. So our objective is to go, what's the least amount of money that the cost we can incur to one of our clients to try to pay to get the score where they need to get it, and the shortest amount of time possible. So that's what we did. This lady that we did the down payment assistance for, this program, was I looked into it. I think it was, however many points it was when I played with the system, put her on a plan, required about $1,800. She paid a couple things down. We looked at credit, like 3 months later, she had like a 644 FICO, and we got her into escrow, and we did that. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of people talk about going to like credit, companies that'll fix your credit, things like that. Yeah, credit repair. That's great, but I say why pay for it when we offer it for free, And the thing to think about is a lot of times, like when we look at that, and it'll say, do this, do this, do this, and it'll take a year. And we can advise the client, we can tell them who they need to call, do the research on the numbers, ask the questions they need to ask, figure it out, and then they do it. But those credit repair companies, what they do is they get paid by the month. So they're making income off of those for the year. It's just a way to do it.
With us, it's really simple. We run a report, let's say your particular reports, and the report is gonna tell us, okay, it's potential to get an extra 30 points on Equifax or TransUnion 20. So then we'll run this system, and it's gonna give us the answers. Really simple. With that, we'll give it to you guys. It's like, okay, this is what you need to do, and it's simple. It's like, call this credit company, you need to pay $100 towards it, the balance needs to be 100, and then after that, you call them back and say, can you give me my latest balance? They'll send you the letter, you provide that over to us, we run the rapid risk score again. Within a couple of weeks, we can get your scores really high, like the way they should be higher. Okay, so it's what we're gonna help you with is so simple that you guys don't need to pay anybody to work on that.
Yeah, and it'll to what Raphael's saying, it'll literally, when we play with the numbers, and it'll give us the best result in the quickest amount of time. It'll print out in sentence form, like $200, pay this creditor, do that, and so we'll either do a consult in the office with the client and work on that, or we'll send them an email and call them over the phone and talk to them about it, whatever's best for them in their life, for that goes. So, yeah, I mean, it's really easy. So for us, like I said, it's not a matter of if, it's when, it's a big part of it. So, let's see. Okay, so, like I said, there's conventional options, which is an FHA, which is largely what we're gonna go over today. And there's USDA for rural areas. There's like a max income limit on those. We don't see too many of these, although we do them. And VA loans, which is 100% financing for our veterans. So conventional FHA. Just to give you like a brief idea, 3.5% down payment for FHA loans. Okay, FHA loans are great for buyers that might have lower credit scores, okay, and minimal funds for a down payment. Okay, so FHA exists. So let's say somebody has like a 660 credit score, but they've got 3.5% to put down to buy a house. Okay, what we might do, during our consult and after the questions, and a lot of times we'll pass ideas around together because we all work with so many different people, there's a lot of experience, is we'll go, maybe the FHA loan will be a better option for them because the interest rate is going to be a little bit better for that borrower. Conventional is in a lot of ways best if you have maybe like over a 700 FICO and you know you maybe want to put down 5% or 3%, right? So there's things that are incurred. Now, slow me down or ask questions if I'm going too fast. I'm trying to kind of make it easy and digestible. But so let's go back. Like someone with a 680 credit score, they have 3.5% down. I might go FHA loan might make more sense because anytime you put down less than 20%, you have what's called mortgage insurance on your payment. So basically, what that means is because loans are, it's all about risk. You know, the investors are like, what are we risking here? If you put less than 20% down on a home, the investors, you know, skin in the game, right? So the investors are going, we're going to incur you another cost, okay, and that is going to go into your monthly payment because you're not putting 20% down. So there are companies out there, these mortgage insurance companies that we work with that are great, that will take care of the remaining percentage up to the 20% that you did not put down, okay? And so that's a monthly payment. Now, for a lower credit score, an FHA loan, your mortgage insurance annual premium rate is going to be lower. So it's in better interest for someone with a lower credit score, okay? Conventional is going to be not as forgiving. So you might see in your mortgage insurance payment could be 175 or, you know, depending on the loan amount, maybe 225, something like that, depending on the loan amount. Where if you had a 680 and we looked at a conventional, it might be like 375, 400, the rate might be 2.5%, something like that, as opposed to 0.85% for an FHA. So what that means is they would take the loan amount times 0.85%, where in this one with a lower credit score, they may go 2.3% times the loan amount, you know, divided by 12 would be your payment. So overall, in lower FICO scores, credit scores, this is going to be in better interest of those types of borrowers with lower down payment, where conventional loans are going to be a little less forgiving with that. Now, the only thing that's attractive about conventional loans is if you put 20% down, you have no mortgage insurance, right? So let's say you did a conventional loan and only put down 5%. Once your home gets to 20% equity, that mortgage insurance payment falls off. So you don't have that, okay? FHA, it's on for the entire life of the loan. So our job as a lender with our past clients is to constantly, as we do annual reviews with our clients and we keep in touch with our clients, we do events with all of our realtor partners, we'll rent out movie theaters and invite the
Past
families.
clients,
And, yeah, with our past clients, and we'll do all that really because it's not about the deal, it is about the relationship and the trust. Your families are too important to us, and I wouldn't want to do this if it wasn't, you know? But we'll review that. So let's say someone's gained enough equity on their home in a certain amount of time. So they've gained equity, and now they're at 20% of where it is. We might refinance someone out of an FHA loan and then move them to a conventional loan where they would drop their mortgage insurance payment, which would save you $200 or some odd dollars or whatever it is a month. And that's part of our job. It's not just when the loan closes, it's to look after our clients all the time and see what we can do to help them. So that's kind of like the basic difference between the two. You know, if there's anything to add?
We're always going to be looking for the best interest of you guys, of the client. That's the way that we always work and our company works. So we're going to always offer you the best, what's going to be beneficial for you guys.
Yeah, that first conversation is always my favorite, especially when I don't know the person, because I know they A, probably don't want to talk to me, or B, they're overwhelmed and they don't know exactly what they can do. And really, like, I just want to convey that the more we know up front and the more that we can build that trust together, we can put a plan together, you know, that's going to work best for you and save you the most money. That's it right there. So we kind of talked about this, conventional loans. you know, they can go up to 97%, like loan to value, so you can do a 3% conventional loan. I'm gonna get into an easier way we can do this, but that's kind of more realistic with pricing and things like that, but we talked about that. FHA loans, so we talked about that, so we covered that a little bit. But a lot of times, like you might hear lenders say, like, we have first-time home buyers programs, or we have this kind of stuff. A lot of times they're just talking about FHA loans. You know, you can have an FHA loan, and then you can sell your house and buy another, and then assume another FHA loan afterwards. I was talking to a friend of mine at my daughter's like birthday party, and he's like, they haven't bought a house for like 7 years. We were just talking about it. He said, well, you know, I only have about 3.5%, and I wanted to do an FHA loan, but I already had one for the previous house we owned, and I know you can only use it once. I go, man, I have not been talking to you enough about this. No, I don't see him enough. But you know, it's so a lot of times that you'll hear advertisements, they'll disguise these things, just ways to get you in, first-time home buyer programs, things like that. It's really just for that. For the down payment assistance loan, that is if you have not owned a home in 3 years. So you can't use the down payment assistance loan if you own another property, but if it's been 3 years since you've owned another home, that's what they call a first-time home buyer. Okay, so that 3 years you couldn't own a property, 640 and above FICO, and I think it's if you make under $128,000 a year combined household income, then you qualify for the down payment assistance loan. Okay, but FHA loans are great. You can use everything from 401k to 100% gift funds from family or people. You know, any of that kind of that makes FHA great. The USDA, like I said, it's rural. You know, we don't see too much of it. Minimum 640 FICO. There's, you know, fees and 100% financing off it, but there's income limits. We don't see too many of these. I'm gonna go over a better version of this flyer, so I'm just gonna pass it. Yeah, so we offer veteran VA purchase a home with no money. There's also no mortgage insurance on a VA loan, which makes it, you know, obviously it helps. It helps for their service. But in a lot of ways, it's the same thing. It's a great loan, and we do a lot of it.
Yeah, Darren, on those, you know, when we're talking about no money down, again, we're gonna reiterate that. You're still gonna need your $1,000, $2,000 to make that initial offer. Then after that, we can work with the numbers with you guys on that. Okay, so that's
Yeah, like that's called an earnest money deposit.
Yeah.
It's like a sign of good faith that you're really going to buy the house. And then a lot of times what will happen is once you close with those programs, they will issue you a check back.
Yeah.
With that.
Cover that.
And if you're putting money down, let's say you have your earnest money deposit, it's not like you put down your earnest money deposit and then it's also all the cash you bring in at close. It would be minus what you're putting down.
Already, yeah.
So if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, jumbo loans, you know, in financing, you know, up to $2-3 million. Again, with jumbo loans, they're just different layers to them. If you have questions about that stuff, let me know. And then there's specialty programs out there. So there are other types of programs like the 203K. So there's like an FHA loan that, same thing, FHA loan, but what it does is it allows someone, let's say you walk into a house, you're like, I love this house, it's amazing, it's totally us, this is the best thing, but the kitchen is nowhere near like I want it to be. So there's programs out there, there's 203K, they'll give you a certain amount of money, I think it's up to like $30,000 more, which is 35,000, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So you can use it for things like remodeling the kitchen. The way it is let's say you find the place and you want to write the offer, so you tell your agent, everything goes in there, you get a contractor in there like the next day, they'll give you an estimate of what those costs will be, we submit them, and then everything else moves along and you have a new kitchen or new carpets or whatever. Yeah, so equity building, you know, it's just kind of like what we were talking about. So you purchase a home, over time that home is going to appreciate, and you're gonna be paying that mortgage down, and the value is gonna be going up. So as you are, you know, going through that, you know, like I said, it's a great thing about the down payment assistance loan, is that you come in with $0 and then your house is making you money. And as we go through that, you know, we can always refinance and get you back into like a conventional loan where we would drop the mortgage insurance at some point. And you gain enough equity to pay back the money that you borrowed. Where you wouldn't need to pay back until you either made the last payment on the house 30 years down the road, or you make a refinance, where therefore it wouldn't be more money out of your pocket per se, but it's the money you gain in what the house is owed. Are you with me on that? Does that make sense?
You guys have any questions?
Yeah, any
Yeah.
questions? Am I going too fast or anything like that? No, it's okay? Okay. We also do reverse mortgages. Reverse mortgages, we're not gonna get really into it today, but it's a amazing product that can help the right type of client. A lot of people have heard bad things about these programs, but for older clients, 62 years and older, they can basically get into a reverse mortgage. They own the house, they own title to the house, the lender's not own title, the state does not, the city does not. They own the house, and basically they have no principal and interest payment for the rest of their lives. And then they also get access to usually about 40 to 50% equity of their house. So they would then get a bank account based on their equity, where they can either pay themselves monthly for the rest of their lives as long as they live in the house, or they can leave it as like a savings bank account that gains positive interest on it. It's a pretty amazing product. I could talk a lot about it, but you know, let me know if you have questions. So yeah, I mean, a mortgage is a big deal, right? In fact, it's so big of a deal, it's too important to answer questions without knowing the answers right away, to give you an answer right away. You know, a lot of questions like we get, I just got this question the other day, is I talked to somebody and they said, well, you know, what's the interest rate, and you know, what's this, and just tell me, like, you know, how much I gotta bring in, and they wanted all these answers up front. I said, those are all great questions, and there's multiple layers to that. So interest rates are, this is kind of an interesting subject. I always like to talk to the clients about this, because you hear stuff on the radio and you hear people talking about certain things. So the important thing about an interest rate is you can get what is called a par interest rate, okay? So like, let's say we talk, you have a 700 credit score, and I tell you the rate's gonna be 4.5%, okay? So you go, okay, Darren, it's 4.5%. So that's gonna take whatever your payment is, but that interest rate costs you $0, okay? $0. And ask questions at any time as I walk you through this, but this is what I try to explain to the client. So let's say it's 4.5%, it costs $0, that's just what the rate is. And then you go into your bank and you see at Chase or whatnot, and it's like, you know, 4.25. And you're like, wow, Darren is a real jerk. You know, why he's at 4.5, the bank is at 4.25, right? Now the way it works is we all get our money from the same place. We really do. And so when we type in what rates are going to be based on a sales price, and also what determines rate is if it's your primary residence and you put down 20%, that rate might be 4.25%. But if it's your primary residence and let's say you have a 700 credit score or a 680 credit score, it might be 4.5%. You know, if it's a second home, you know, that there's going to be a higher interest rate for that second home. Because the investors, it's all risk-based, so they want to protect their costs, right? If it's your primary home, you're less likely to not make your payments on it than a second home, things like that. So there are all these different factors that kind of go into the rate. But let's get back to the initial, which is I tell you 4.5% and that rate costs $0. You go to the bank, it's 4.25, okay? What they don't tell you is they're going to charge you 1% of the loan amount or 2% of the loan amount, which is called a buy down, right? So like, they're just gonna make that attractive interest rate offer, and then they're charge you, it's gonna be $9,000 at close to save 1/4 of a point on an interest rate, which we could do too. I always tell people when we talk to them, you know, this is the rate that costs you nothing. This is the rate that we could charge you 2%, you know, what the bank is showing, or things like that. Now, most of the time, my clients don't wanna pay $9,000 more at close to save $60 on their mortgage payment. Because it's gonna take, I mean, you know, it's gonna take a long time to get that back. You know, so same way on the other side of it. So let's say you hear on the radio like, hey, we cover your closing costs. You know, they don't just give you, you know, $9,000. Nobody's gonna do that. I wish that was the case. If anyone knows anybody that'll do that, I'm gonna give them a call. But the way they do that is they'll build in the rate. So let's say that 4.5. Let's say I wanted to say to you, you know, I'll cover your closing costs, but the rate's gonna be 4.85, because then it's gonna be a rebate of money coming back to you, $7 grand, $8 grand. So I build that into the interest rate, and then I'm a super nice guy because I'm giving you money, but you're really paying, you know, $65 more a month on your mortgage for 360 payments to make up for that amount. Does anyone, are you guys following me kind of?
Yeah.
Like, and that's the way it works. People are not just gonna give you money, and I mean, at the end of the day, look, if we talk to a client and they get another estimate from somebody else, and it's a better deal, in a heartbeat, we want Gio and Ignacio, Eduardo, you guys in your lives is the most important thing. There's other business out there. If there's a better deal to be found, we will let our clients know. That is better, we can't do it. That doesn't happen very often, but I always like to just paint the picture so you know that people aren't just, I'm not a bad guy and that guy's the good guy. It's all based on, just like no mortgage insurance. So we talked about FHA, right? Or conventional loans if you put down less than 20%. So let's say you put down 10%, you're gonna do a conventional loan. You would have a mortgage insurance payment. I might give you that quote and you would see like a $175 mortgage payment. Then you go to the bank and they're like, oh, you can put down 10% and we'll cover your mortgage insurance payment. Now they're not just gonna make that payment for you for $300 until you get 20% equity. What they're gonna do is they're gonna charge you a higher interest rate, and they'll give you $9 grand to pay off the mortgage insurance, but they're gonna charge you more monthly for it. Go ahead.
And I'm gonna interrupt you. And I'm gonna give you an example, which is my sister-in-law. She 4 years ago, she wanted to buy a house, but she goes, Rafael only got just a down payment, 3.5%. We went FHA. I said, yeah, we can help you. And she goes, I don't care about the rate. Just give me for the closing costs. So at that point, 3-4 years ago, I gave her, the rate was probably like 4 3/4, or yeah, something like that, 4 3/4. We ended up giving her 5.25% to cover her costs. She only had for the down payment. So she ended up getting her house just with the 3.5% down, and I gave her a higher rate because she didn't care about that. She goes, I'm gonna refinance in the future, 2-3 years later. So sure enough, so she got it 4 years ago. 2 years ago, the rates got better, and we always keep our marketing on our clients. So we're always checking back with them 6 months, a year, every year. So when the time was like, oh, these are good rates right now, let me call my sister-in-law. Call her back, she goes, yeah, let's start the process. That time, we put it from FHA to conventional financing, lock her back in at 3.75 fixed rate, saving her over $250 a month. So that was great because she took the 2 years, and then the rates dropped, that home went up on value, and we did it. And she's so happy right now with her less than $1,000 payment on that particular home that we got her. So that's how it can work.
Yeah, those are like the best stories. And another thing we did too is like, so there was a client that had about $20,000 to buy a house, right? And they wanted to buy like a $350,000 house, although when we factored what they could afford based on what they make and what their debts are, they had a car payment of about like $350, $400 a month, right? They owed about $9,000 on that car. So what we did was when we finished them, had them in for the consult, we said, look, there's 2 ways we could go about it. You can qualify for about a $300,000 house. house, $310,000 house, with your car payment, bringing in this amount of funds. Or there might be another way where we could take the 20,000, pay off 9,000 for the car, eliminate that debt. Every $50, $60 worth of debt is about $10,000 in sales price. So if you eliminate a $350, $400 payment, pay that off, put them into a down payment assistance loan, they're actually able to go from the 310 house they could buy to qualify for the $350,000 house. They get into that house and we help them. So it's that's like the part we love about it is what can we do to help the client the most. You know, that's really it. So that's kind of how we can use these programs and kind of make it work, which is hence, you know, the big deal. There was also, yeah, I mean, Rafael just helped another client get their credit up and get into a Cal Alpha.
Yeah, this one, it took me a year. But again, you know, we give them their homework, like, okay, do this. They check with us every 2-3 months, and they keep doing what we tell them to do. After a year later, they were ready, and we got them into a house. So, yeah, it was great to see that, because now, you know, we have a customer for life, and that's what we want, you know, for you guys and with Ignacio and Gio, you know, that partnership to help you guys, to be able to help you with that the same way.
Rafa, one question.
Yeah, sure.
What? It took a year.
Yes.
What was the situation that it took that long to?
It was just 580 FICO score, and just paying some debts off, and then removing some collections. But after a while, they remove, and it was just paying some debts. And then they just keep, okay, I already paid this one down. Okay, great. So every 3 to 4 months, I was checking their credit. Like, okay, you're almost there. Sometimes it was just taking longer because they didn't have the money and they're just waiting, and then it just took longer in that case. So, but no, eventually he paid them off, and then I run the credit again, and they're like, boom, boom, 640. They get you in a house.
And sometimes,
So,
and sometimes there's really sometimes it's really interesting because there's no like rhyme or reason as to how it works. Sometimes with certain reports and where their history is, we'll do a couple tweaks, and it'll be 3 or 4, you know, months, 2 times, sometimes 1 month, and sometimes it'll be a year, and sometimes it'll be 2 years. I mean, based on how many lates they've had, if they have a lot of charge-offs, collections. You know, medical lates and collections, lenders don't really, we aren't looking at that kind of stuff. Even charge-offs for a large part. It's like once the original creditors charge something off, it's like a loss, so we aren't even really looking at it. Collections, anything over $2,000, it's usually about like 4% or something like that. So we can find ways to like squeeze as much as we can, the best possible way to help our clients as quickly as possible. We want to set you up for the win, to go looking, because let's face it, as much as I'm making all this stuff look cool with us, or at least I hope I'm making it look cool with us, you're going to have much more fun with your realtors because you're looking for the homes and you're doing everything you're doing. It's our job to make it easy and for you to see that light at the end of the tunnel. That's a way that we can do it. So yeah, and sometimes like it's really interesting based on your question is, so like I'll take somebody's credit card, let's say they owe $2,500 on it, and I'll pay it, like I'll move it to like $2,200, and in a month the score won't budge, and then I'll go like $2,000 and it'll like move 3 points, and I'll go $1,500, I'll move 10 points, and then I'll like press 0. If it's 0, it'll go back up 5 points, but then I'll move it to $10 and it'll move like 40 points if you leave that $10 balance on there. Does that make sense? So as I'm playing with what the client it can do to fix the score and the timeline, it's like, it's weird, like 0 will not give you, it won't move the needle, but you leave $10 balance on there, it'll move it 20 points or whatever it might be. Everyone's a little different out in that case. So does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about collections and charge-offs being on the credit, and you don't look at that, does that in any way affect everyone's FICO score per se?
Yes. So if someone has multiple charge-offs or things like that, it would have affected their credit score in the trajectory of time before we've spoken to them. So if you had something happen and you could not pay your bills, or some kind of emergency happened, just whatever happened, life gets tough, And during that period of time, that's gonna do the most damage to your score, right? But let's say you get back on your feet, I don't know, maybe you took a personal consolidation loan, whatever it might be, to turn it around, you know, now you're starting to make your payments on time. You know, a lot of times like clients, they might not even have credit cards and can't get credit cards. What we'll do is when we look at that report, if the damage is done to a certain extent and that score is suffering, what we'll do is we'll go, okay, look, here's the deal. Like, we're gonna have you, these charge-offs we're not gonna worry about. We're not gonna, with the collections, just leave them where they are. What we want you to do is get a secured credit card. So you can take $300, get an actual secured credit card, start using that $300, and then pay another $300. After you start doing that cycle of using a secured credit card, all of a sudden when you start making those payments, you might be able to get another credit card and then use that for groceries, but pay it off every month. And start doing some positive credit work, you know, to start building it back up. And that score can build up with those charge-offs all there. So really the answer to the question is more the damage is kind of already done when we see all that. It's about coming up with a plan to start raising it.
And does everybody know what a secured credit card is?
What do you
Yes,
put
no?
into it?
Yes.
Right,
You're
okay,
able to get your
perfect,
credit?
yeah.
Yes.
So now let's just say I have no credit. I wanna buy a house. My wife has more credit than me. How can I, you know, as a buyer, improve my credit score so that we can go and get that house that requires a 640
You wanna
down
take that
payment
one?
assistance?
Yeah,
Great question.
Ignacio, that's a great question. This one's really simple. You have no credit, your wife has credit. It's just a matter of your wife adding you to her credit that she already has established, okay? And it's simple, you know, it's gonna be his name, social, date of birth, calling your company, your wife's company, she's gonna do that for you. Given that information, you know, within a month cycle, you know, you're gonna see yourself already on the credit card, but at the same time, not just for yourself, you need to get at least one of your own credit, and one way to get it is jewelry store. Go to a jewelry store, apply for anything, $200, $300, I don't care, whatever they approve you for. But at least you need to get one of your,
Right.
yeah, and that's really simple, yeah.
And oh, go ahead.
And so you're talking about down payment assistance, just so everybody knows, where is that money coming from, the down payment assistance money?
Grant. So it's a grant. There's a calculation that they'll do. I think they're moving it to, it used to be like 4% of what the loan amount is, plus another combination, like they'll put, I've got the calculation written down, I do them all the time, but basically a grant. It
Okay.
comes as a grant, and it comes as a second and a third. So your first, like I said, is.
They will not get confused, you know, that it's, like talking about second and third is kind of confusing, but once you guys sit with us and we explain to you that, it's gonna be part of your mortgage payment. You're not gonna be paying second loan, third loan.
Yeah,
It's-
as I said, yeah, you don't pay
Like,
them.
basically silent loans per se.
What was that?
Silent loans or silent,
Yes.
Yes, yeah, and those are not due until, like I said, you either refinance the loan or the
Yes.
house closes. Like I said, these are safe loans, there's no prepayment penalties
No.
or any kind of stuff, I mean, they're good for families.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah,
This is a question from an audience member. Basically, they want to know for if something comes up, I want you guys to respond since we're here and everybody can hear. Foreclosures, how long will that affect? And what can be
Yeah,
done?
good
And be
question.
case, might as well throw it in there
Yeah.
as well.
you want it?
Yeah, the foreclosures is that, you know, we're talking about FHA, okay, so you're looking about 2 years back, BK 2 year, chapter 7, so 2 years. So after 2 years, if you had a bankruptcy, chapter 7, then if you had already started establishing your credit, that's the time frame.
And for the short sale, it's 3
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Okay. Foreclosures,
Foreclosures, 3 years.
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
So it has to be cleared.
From the date,
From the date.
it's gotta show that whatever that date is, that
Yeah.
it's done, paperwork
Yeah.
submitted,
Yeah.
official date, 3 years.
Yeah.
For the bankruptcy, it's 2 years.
2 years, chapter 7.
And there are programs out there, if you have enough money to bring in, where like there's like, you know, 1-day bankruptcies, you know, obviously, and things like that. I mean, we work We are a direct lender, so we fund our own loans, but we work with lots of investors and different people out there, the right investors that can help you. So, does that answer? Is that good?
So, and I'm gonna tell another story. This is my daughter's, okay? And she just used this down payment assistance program up in Northern California, County Napa, okay? So, and I was there last weekend helping her move. It took us, normally those programs, they want us to do 45-day escrow, okay, to do 45 days. This one, I'm not kidding you, because we started in December and I had her like kind of pre-approved within a couple of weeks. When she found a home, we were ready like the second week that we were in escrow. The sellers were not. So we ended up waiting like a week for her to get in. But again, she had the money for the down payment. I said, no, you save the money for furniture, whatever, after you move into your house. Same thing, you know, she started with initial deposit, $4,000, because this house was over $419 up in Northern California. $419, she went in with $4,000. The sellers helped her with $6,500 towards closing costs. And the program, the College FA program, was able to help her with the rest, the closing costs, the down payment. So when we closed, escrow wired her the $4,000 plus, you know, extra, whatever, but she got her money back. In other words, she went into the house with zero money. So that was,
Yeah, go ahead.
So, okay, I'm a new buyer, alright? I wanna buy a house, been thinking about it. Don't know anything about any process of buying or loans or anything like that. My question is, Darren, what do I have to do to get approved for a loan so I know what amount of money or what amount of sales price I have to go out and buy? And I have $4,000. What's my first step to being a homeowner?
Yep, great question. So at that point, what I would say is, do you have about 5 minutes? Let's have a quick conversation. You know, I'm gonna ask you a few questions. I'm gonna ask you about your current address. I'm gonna ask you, get your email, phone number. We're gonna talk about what you do for work. You know, we're gonna go into what your credit looks like, how much you have, $4,000 to close with. We're gonna look at what you want your mortgage payment to be around. And then when we finish that phone call, I'm gonna tell you, this is what we're gonna do. With your permission, we're gonna take a look at your credit score. We're gonna run credit, and within about 15 minutes after I hang up the phone with you here, I'm gonna give you a call back. We're gonna go over a little bit more options, and then I'm gonna have my assistant reach out to you, set up a time for you to come into our office to sit down so we can sit face to face and go over the options. And I'll call you back in about 15 minutes. Is that okay?
Absolutely. And when do you need it for me to
with the
pay?
list.
Yeah, well, that, like I said, initially, yeah, and I'll get to that.
Okay.
So then what will happen is we'll get off the phone, I'll run credit, take a look at it, let's say everything looks good, $4,000, maybe we look at a down payment assistance program. So then I would call you back and I would say, okay, credit looks good, $4,000. I'm thinking that maybe a good option for you would be this CalHFA down payment assistance program,
Okay.
which requires, 3 years tax returns, 3 years W-2s, most recent pay stubs. I'm gonna have my assistant Sylvia send you an email right now within about 5 minutes. She's also gonna give you a call and she's gonna schedule a time for you to bring in the documentation or send it in. We're gonna sit down and go over all the options. But I think I might be able to put together a plan for you to be able to purchase a home, come in with $0, and keep that $4,000 back to you. And that's all within about 20 minutes,
Yeah,
25 minutes.
And on the list, guys, it goes, we ask for the 1 month worth of pay stubs, 2 months of bank statements, copy of ID, the 3 years of your tax returns. Yeah, so it's all there.
Yeah, and that's it. So 2 years is kind of the standard. So if you're bringing in money, it's about 2 years tax returns, most recent pay stubs, 2 years W-2s. It's different. We could get into a whole class on if you own your own business and Schedule C income versus W-2 income. A lot of people say if I'm not at my job for 2 years, I can't buy a house, which is totally untrue. We look for a 2-year work history, right? That can be all over the place. Also, we had a client, I think it was, I don't know if it was Raphael or one of my partners, Dave, where he just got a W-2 job. He was making like $140,000 a year, but for the previous 5 years, he was working, getting paid cash under the table. So he said, I talked to a couple other lenders and they said I couldn't buy a house. So we said, okay, before that 5-year period of getting paid cash, did you have any W-2 jobs? He did. So he had W-2. So we got tax returns from like 2010, 2011, and 2012 to put together for our underwriters. And then remember how I told you in the beginning, through our company, I can call my underwriter and find out the person who's examining your loan, right? So then I go, okay, I think I got a way that I can work this because you had the 2 years experience, but the gap, and now we can get a new pay stub. So I get off the phone, call the underwriter. I have 2 years work history, but it's like 7 years ago, and now a current job. As long as you have the documentation to support it, you can get the borrower approved, and everything will be good. So call the borrower back. As long as you can document those tax returns and those things, then we can put it all together and get you approved and get out looking for a house right away.
And most of that stuff is for the, to show like down payment assistance, is that you have not owned a house in the last 3 years. That's why they use that, you know, that they wanna see like that you file taxes. On your taxes, you're always gonna file that you do or you didn't have a house.
You can deduct your mortgage
and mortgage.
interest. So they're looking
Yeah.
basically for that, for
Yeah,
the last
for
3
that.
years of
Yeah.
tax returns.
Yeah.
For that documentation.
Yeah, one thing that I missed on my daughter was that she just became a nurse in June of last year. So prior to that, it was transcripts because of the tax returns. That she started working 6 months ago. So we did it with the 6 months, and then the husband being 2 years on his job. But for my daughter, it was just, okay, give me, to prove that you have not owned a home in the last 3 years, where have you been? In school, then get the school transcripts, and that's how we prove that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a relatively, we want to make this process easy, streamlined, and like it's manageable, step by step.
Yeah.
So like I said, we get the question, what do I have to do? Do you have 5 minutes? We talk about where you live, do you pay rent, do you not pay rent, what you do for work, all that, 5-10 minute conversation, call back in 15 minutes, set up an appointment, have you come in so we can really go deeper and figure out what's important to you, what the plans are, and then pretty much approved right then and there. After you are approved, this is one thing I did want to kind of get into as we wrap it up, is you know, the important thing about working with people that work together is that you've got a team of people working for you. The best way I can explain that is we are always in contact with our realtors and our clients as far as what's going on. So let's say you're approved for that $350,000 house, right? And what Eduardo was talking about property tax, right? So property tax rates and payments can change. There's lots of different factors of what your payment is that can make it maybe change. There's higher property tax areas, and there's ways that, basically in simple form, as you're looking, let's say you have 3 houses that you're going to go see with your realtor, right? Our realtor is going to let us know what houses you're going to look at. We're going to run the numbers. We're going to look at the address, what the property tax rate is, what the payment's going to be. So that way you know when you're going to look for those 3 houses, if you love it, you can write an offer then and there on the spot. It's not like you're going to go to that house and you're going to love it and then you're going to call me or the realtor is going to call me and you can't write an offer because the property tax rate is way too high and it changes your payment and you don't qualify for it. It's us working together to make that happen. The other thing we do for all of our clients is when you write an offer with your agent and our agent, you know, the first thing that we'll do is we'll call the listing agent, the other person on the side of that offer, to let them know, hey, I'm just reaching out for Mr. and Mrs. or the borrower, and we just want to let you know how qualified they are. We have all of their documentation. This is going to be a really smooth transaction. We're here to help. We know they look good. What do you need? We can send you anything you need right now. They're really excited about getting into the home, which just helps because at the end of the day, that person who's accepting offers, they want to know one thing: can this loan close? Because if that loan doesn't close and they take a bad deal, that person selling the house is not going to be too happy with them, you know? So us working together to help you, your offer get accepted and help you guys win is the best part about what we do, you know? So yeah, so documentation lists, you know, bank statements, things like that. We also have payment assurance programs. So if you lose your job at some point after you've closed escrow on your new house, we will cover, I think it's about $1,500 a month, up to $9,000 towards your mortgage payment. So through our company, we offer a payment assurance program. So when you close a loan with us and something happens, in that sense, we will cover, if not your full payment, up to $1,500, up to $9,000 for, you know, around 6 months or so. So we offer that.
And it's not, no payment out of pocket, it's part of what it's on.
So yeah, I mean, that's a big part, you know? Any questions?
They're ready to be pre-qualified.
Yeah, we're all ready to go. You're all ready to go, right? Let's look at real quick though. Final, like I did have one kind of
Yeah, so
payment
they
thing
can,
for you guys
so
to
they can
look
see
at.
the payment.
Another thing that I kind of wanted to talk about, and I don't know, I'm sure that the gentleman here might have something to say about it, is as you're looking for houses, if you're looking on Zillow, if you're looking around on the internet, I highly advise against that for the only reason that they do not update the site. I've had clients that have looked on there, found a house they really want to buy, that house was sold 6 months ago. Or it's in contract, things like that. So when you talk to a realtor, your realtor partner, and also a lender, we offer the same kind of thing. It's a private way to shop for homes and look, where you won't get, they sell your information on Zillow. If you type in your info, you're gonna get calls from people like me all day long, and you're gonna not be happy. So when I highly suggest before you leave today, or just in general, to get signed up if you wanna look for homes, even if you're working on a plan, and stay off Zillow, because most of the information is just not real. You know, they don't update it. I know our sites are gonna be updating every 5 minutes, something like that. You know,
So just to piggyback on that, we do ask that you guys supply us with your email, because we will send you a link. It's gonna be an app. It's our app, and that is basically tied into our MLS, my MLS, Gio's MLS. So when you guys go in there, see like a house, you wanna look at the house, you can type that address in, and it'll give you to-date information, up to the minute information. And also, you can pick an area and just see what the area is, you know, what homes are available, the prices of the homes, all this good stuff. So make sure we get you guys emails, and we'll set you up for that.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
yeah, and that's just a good way to do it. So in closing, you know, the biggest question I think we're offered is like, how much money do I need to close, and what's my payment gonna be? That's like always like the most common, quickest question we get to. So I just wanted to kind of print this out. I can send you guys this flyer. We can get you this flyer. Just let us know. Hit me up after this, or any of us after, and we'll make sure you get it. So I don't know if you can see, but basically these are FHA loans, okay? And I wanted to pick different price points to kind of give you an idea of what the monthly payment would be, what kind of income we'd look at, and things like that. So as you can see, for this first one, $275 sales price, 3.5% down payment, okay? 30-year loan, rate's gonna be 4.375. Your down payment is gonna be $96.25. Closing costs. Closing costs are gonna be like cost of business. That's like cost for like an appraisal. There are all these things, title, escrow. Title is, that cost is gonna be a cost that incurs to make sure the house that you buy, when you buy it, a painter 10 years ago who put a hold on the property is not gonna now own the property with you after you acquire the property. Okay, so they do deep title searches to make sure no one's put a lien on the property. When you buy it, it is going to be yours, okay? And you pay, there are costs with that, you know? There's appraisal. That's not Darren and Raphael and Cherry Creek charges. Those are just costs of business overall. We can get into more of all that kind of stuff, but those are all moving parts of what makes your closing costs happen, okay? And obviously we break those down for our clients. prepaids and impounds, right? So prepaids are when you buy a house, depending on when you buy it in the year, you have property tax payments. So based on when you buy the house, you might need to have a certain number of months saved up for your property tax payment. So you take whatever the sales price was, let's say your property tax rate is 1.15%, that's a number annually, and you divide that by 12, that's your monthly property tax payment. So let's say you buy your house 6 months in the year. So what we do on an estimate sheet that you'd see is you'd see under prepaids, you'd see like, you know, prepaid property tax payment is gonna be like, you know, $4,500. And you're like, well, what is that? That's what it is, what I just explained. It's making sure that you have enough money to make your property tax payment.
And depending on what type of the month you close, or you're gonna be, closing, it could be 3 months that we collect, 6 months, or up to 9 months of property tax that it builds into that.
And prepaid interest, like prepaids would be like prepaid interest. So let's say you move in on the 17th, there's gonna be a certain number of days that you're gonna owe for interest at closing. It might be $30, it might be $217, whatever it might be. So that's all, like I said, it's a whole different thing altogether. In simple terms, for a $275 sales price, your principal and interest payment's gonna be about $1348. Okay? And the taxes, property taxes, which we talked about, insurance, gonna be probably somewhere close to about $55. When you own a home, you must acquire homeowner's insurance. You must have it. So it's gonna be roughly about a $55 a month cost. And then mortgage insurance, what we talked about, right? So your total monthly payment might be $1,854 for a $275 house, okay? $300,000, you know, same thing. We walk you through everything. It's gonna be about $2,018, right? $350, you're $2,345, and $400, $2,672.
And these are real numbers, guys. I mean, the ones that you see online or on the websites, you'll see.
I
the
ran
top
these
one.
when I got in here too.
Yeah.
And here's the thing to think about. This is what we're always up against with clients. Is like they'll look at this, and what they'll do is like, you know, we'll be like, okay, it's 4.375, and then they're like, well, the bank told me it was 4.125, and then they'll go, you're such a bad person, Jared. No, they won't say that, but it's like, you know, I'll basically say to them, yes, okay, so when the bank, have them show you an estimate. And they'll show you an estimate, and then you'll see they've got to bring in they've got to bring in almost $9,000 more to get that quarter of a point different in an interest rate. So they're paying $9,000 more required to close to get a better interest rate. That's only going to change their payment by about $55 or $65. You know, it's just stuff to think about. But yeah, these are real numbers. This is today. I ran these when I got here to the office before we started today. Like I said, I can get you stuff like this. You can take a look at it. So yeah, no, I appreciate everybody's time. We're here to help. Thank you guys. Thank you. You know?
All right, Dan, Rafael, thank you very much. Well, guys, I want to thank you guys for all coming. I know it was a little bit, a lot of information, quite a bit overwhelming, right, sometimes. But let us know if we can help with anything. You guys are ready to get your credit checked, you know, see where you stand, maybe set up an appointment. Let us know, we'll be here. But thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.